I'm going to be talking about two things in the next half hour. One is this, if you're a blueberry grower, you've probably seen some of these slides already, or if you're up from Linden in Washington, I gave a similar talk up in Linden earlier at the end of last year. Tom wanted me to talk about this project because this was before we knew that we would be doing something, which I mentioned earlier this morning, something similar in caneberries. And the caneberry industry is interested in, I guess, just to be aware of what we've done in blueberries, if you don't know, pesticide degradation. And I'm going to explain what this project was all about. And as I mentioned this morning briefly, that we do have some funding from the Washington Red Raspberry Commission for one of my colleagues up there to determine pesticide degradation of insecticides in caneberry crops. And then if we get a bigger federal grant, we're going to include more insecticides and probably most of the fungicides that are registered. So this is something that I hope you'll see that really can benefit an industry, and it's going to be happening for the caneberry industry to some extent. So I'm going to talk about the project, just show you the kind of data we've gotten. I have a lot of can you hear me, Tim? Oh.
Try the other mic, Joe. Maybe
Yeah, there you go.
might work better now.
They're not tethered. You know, you're deducting these minutes from my time, right? Is that, can you hear anything?
Yes.
Tim, you need a hearing aid.
I'm old.
Okay, I'll try to talk up. If it's too loud, tell me. I apologize. It's just so awkward to have this thing in front of your face. So I hope that you can see what we're planning to do in caneberries, and I hope you see the benefit of it. So I'll go through a few slides. Everybody, hopefully by now, for the last 2 years, I've been talking about MRLs, the maximum residue levels allowed in food crops in the United States. We call them tolerances. You cannot be over what EPA considers the safe level. The big problem with our berries being exported to Canada, Mexico, anywhere in the world is that most of these other countries have their own MRLs, and they don't always match the United States MRLs. And that's where you run into a trade barrier. And you either don't send your fruit, or if you do send your fruit, you're at risk of a violation, which I won't talk about now, but I talked before. It's not pretty. First the grower gets reprimanded and fined, then the whole United States crop of whatever crop it is. It happened to blueberries 3 years ago. It was berries from California, fresh berries. They had a violation. They had to deal with it. They had 2 violations. Then they held all blueberry crops, frozen and fresh, going to Japan until they got 60 clean samples that the pesticide wasn't showing up there. So what happens here in Oregon and other parts of caneberry world in the United States can affect what happens when you're trying to market the crop. So that's what an MRL is all about. That's why they're important. And if you sell fruit through a processor, you know all about MRLs. So basically, very simple what we're trying to do and what we did do in blueberries. Here's an example of mannitol. The United States MRL is 3 parts per million. You can see the EU and the UK are very low. Canada's free, so shipping to Canada in this particular case is not a problem. But if you want to get your berries into Korea, let's say, this was for fresh market blueberries, you'd have a problem. Because if you picked at 3-day PHI like you would for a US crop, you would not make it into the Korean market because their residues at 3 days PHI are probably close to 1, right? This is days PHI, days after the application, and this is the residue levels in parts per million. So the theory was, what can we do? Can we delay harvest? Can we develop this kind of a curve? And this is what we did. We collected fruit at 1, 4, 9, 13, 17, 21 days to develop this curve. And we're trying to reach the Korean 0.5. And so what this curve is telling us is that if you wait 9 days, then you could make it into the Korean market. Now, you don't want to bet the farm on this. I mean, this is 3 years of study, 5 locations in Oregon, Washington, and Michigan. over 3 years, if I haven't said that already. So it's the best that we can come up with, but it's better than what we've had before. So this is the kind of information that growers have been asking me for years. Hey, if I use such and such, if I just wait a couple more days while I make it, we don't know. At least this is a study that's giving us some real data. So that was the objective of the study. And so, as I said, we did it for 3 years. 1 site in Oregon, 3 in Washington. These are the folks who helped up in Washington. And our small fruit guy at Michigan State, Rufus Isaacs, after the first year, he decided to jump in and join us because it's good information for their blueberry industry. So what we did was, instead of trying to keep it all standard, like you do in a scientific experiment, and try to reduce the variability, we try to introduce as much variability as possible because we know growers are doing all kinds of things. They have all kinds of varieties. They have all kinds of spray equipment. They use different gallonages. So here's what we did. You know, between over the 3 years, the 5 sites, we used Blue Crop, Draper, Duke, and Elliott. There was somebody using air blast, and over the little boom, a handheld CO2 gas, anywhere from 50 to 75 gallons per acre. And we all sent samples to the same laboratory, so at least that was standard. So, and these are the chemicals we use. Basically, it's these, I think 13? Yes, 13. The first set was starting with Zeta. So we did 1 application of each of these. This was a tank mix. But we wanted to see, well, what happens if you do 2 applications versus 1? So instead of doing it for everything, we just repeated the Zeta. The treatment number 1 is basically applied 2 times, and that became treatment number 3. Now, there's still some question about, if you're a scientist or even a logical person, you're thinking, what do the residues look like if you don't throw 6 products in a tank together? We don't have the answer for that yet, but we're hoping to do a quick and dirty comparable study to show that the chemists, we talked to 3 different labs, chemists who know a lot more about this than I do, they said there shouldn't be a negative effect by throwing all these chemicals together. You probably don't want to put 25 in a tank. I don't know, there could be a surfactant in one that could be affecting the other one, but we kind of got permission from the chemists to do these 3 treatments. 2 treatments, 1 application, and then the 3rd treatment, it was basically the first one repeated 7 days later. So, and then we collected samples before we sprayed, just to make sure there was no background noise or background pesticides in the samples. And then we collected at 1, 4, 9, 13, 17, 21 days. So here's an example of, so this is 3 years of data. Michigan is in black, Oregon is in red. The different years have different little codes on them. There's 3 sites in Washington. I don't expect you to digest this. At the end I will explain that we're going to put this in an easy to read form. But this is to show you what we did. So, and this is what you want. We expected a nice degradation curve. At 1 day PHI, the residues are going to be higher than at 21 days, and that's logical. There's ultraviolet light, there's rain, there's irrigation. So I want to say that this would be nice if all the grass looked like this, but they don't. So this is what we're hoping for. And at the end, I'll explain that statistically, we're able to combine the years and the sites to just get 1 line, because there's no statistical difference between the sites over the years. But here they're all separated out. So these represent 3 years, 5 different sites. So smooth curve. We are still actually analyzing the data, even though it's ended in last sample was analyzed in October. So very simply, this is 2 applications of imidacloprid versus 1. This is exactly what you would expect. 7 days later, the residues do build up, and this was just something we wanted to show. Yeah, if you do 7 days apart, you're going to have higher residues. I mean, it's kind of logical. So that's no big thing. Let's see what I said. So I was more interested, like, are we going to meet these markets, which is the European Union, Canada, Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. And so for Zeta, malathion, imidacloprid, spinosad, which of course is Mustang, malathion, Admire, Bravado, Success, we met it. Even if you did 2 applications, we probably wouldn't. So I met the bill by Frankfurt, and I'll show you this later. their residues tended to hang around longer, so there was a buildup, and we did not meet the MRLs with 2 applications. So instead of harvesting, I forget, 1 day PHI, 3 days, you needed to wait a few extra days if you made 2 applications. Don't pay too much attention to this. Basically, this is just showing that residues do accumulate, so be aware of that. So, kind of in summary, a lot of our chemicals did meet all the markets. These 3 in particular did, and that's both good and bad, and I'll explain why in a minute. So this is, in blueberries, this is registered. It's an insecticide, soil, cyanogenolipro. It's going to be registered in caneberries. It's a good spotted wing Drosophila material, a new chemical class, so we've been excited about this one. What was nice to see that all the sites met the Korea market at 0.7. We were concerned because 0.7 is a lot lower than the US tolerance of 4 parts per million. So that was nice. Spinosad, another go-to material we used in trust. This is a wacky, and I think it was one of mine, don't ask me why, but you can see all the other curves are down here, and there was no problem with meeting all the markets. If you harvested like you would in the United States, you could make it into Japan, Korea, Taiwan, even though some of the, like Taiwan is lower. It's just that the residues were so low. And this is the plus and the negative I was talking about. It's great that you can make it into the market, but what this is showing us is that the spinosad is kind of disappearing on the plant, and maybe you're not getting the SWD control that you think you're getting. We did not do a comparable, we didn't do an SWD study. Way's still here. I think last year Way collected samples from my plots, but they were leaf samples, and so we couldn't really correlate the parts per million with efficacy of spotted wing Drosophila, but that would be an interesting study for the next person. Spinetoram, which is a sister compound to spinosad, similar. We met all the, even though they're all less than the United States is 0.25 parts per million, 0.2, well that was 0.5, but 0.2, 0.2. They were still low. This was one that you wouldn't have to really worry about. Well, I'm just going to go through these graphs real quick. Jason's keeping me on time, but he won't succeed. So here's what we're trying to find out. This is bifenthrin, a common go-to material brigade, use it for root weevil control. It meets most of the markets, but in Korea you wouldn't make the market if you harvested it at the 1-day PHI. And I don't know if you can see that, but believe me, it's true. But we found out if you waited 3 days, you would make it, 60% of the samples were less than the Korean market. So this is your confidence level. Do you feel comfortable knowing that 60% of the samples would make it in there or not? But if you waited a full 16 days, which is probably not possible if you're targeting a pest, but what the data shows is that if you wait longer, you have a 90% confidence level that you'll make it under that 0.3 parts per million. So this is the kind of data we're trying to come up with to help you people make decisions. Canada, Codex, EU, Hong Kong. There's Hong Kong. You don't ship at all. They don't even have tolerances, or they're much lower than the United States. So reading your MRL charts, you can pick out which ones you're going to stay away from and which ones you're in. It's the ones that are close that maybe if you wait a day or 2 or 3, you might make it into that market. Yeah.
How do you explain the variability in even the starting point between, 0.15 and all the way up to almost 0.8?
Yeah.
How can you be so different from your starting point?
The question is why are they so different? Where we don't have this statistical analysis on these graphs, and actually that's the part that we're working on. So we don't know whether there's actually a statistical difference. The logical answer, or the obvious answer, is application method. That's one thing. We all use different methods of application. Human error, not error in mixing particularly, but if I were walking, I could have just stopped for 2 seconds longer than the next guy, and I happened to pick my samples there, they would have higher residues. that's why we want to have it over 3 years, lots of sites. So I don't have a good answer, except there's a lot of variability when you do research. It should have been like that Carbaryl graph, the first one. They all started off similarly, they all sloped at the same rate, and they ended up about the same spot, but they're not all like that. So I'm sure that didn't answer your question, but that's what I think is a reason why it happens.
Hey, Joe. I mean, I heard other folks say that the companies that do this research for their own products, they also, I mean, it's part of the game.
Well, yeah, Tom is saying the companies, you know, the Dows and the Bayers and the DuPonts, they collect this kind of information, which they are not willing to share because of that. But yeah, you get variability. Like this, you know, this is just a wacky one. I mean, except for the green line, there's still big variance. I agree, but it shouldn't be that.
I mean, 3 or 4 at the bottom looks like they didn't put any product in at all, you know?
I'm sorry, say that again.
There's 2 or 3 at the bottom, looks like there was no product ever added.
Yeah. Well, that's it. But you know, what we're doing research and base it all on statistics. I won't say that. I cannot say right now that there's a difference between 18 parts per million and 0.2 parts per million, statistically speaking. There could be more variability in the data, meaning that you don't have the confidence at 95% to say that the difference that you see is based on the treatment. That's what statistics are all about. But if we show there's a statistical difference, then we would combine that data. It's wacky. It isn't like yeah, I mean, except for this one, I mean, the slope is the same. You'll see some that the slope goes like this. And we have no explanation. So I don't want to spend a lot of time because I'm cutting into my own time. But basically, this is what we did for all 13 chemicals. And I'm just going to cruise through these. Like I said, I do have a comment about each one, but here's one of those wacky ones again. Can't explain it. So it isn't important to memorize this because I'm going to get to the end. Who put all these slides in here, Jason? Which one?
The last one.
Oh, let's see.
There.
Yeah, that's a close-up. What I did was, well, I can say you can't really see what's going on at these very low levels because the scale is so tight. It's from, you know, 1 part, 2 parts. So I stretched it out just to see where to tease out. This is 0.0 to 0.003. Welcome to the world of research. But the point, I should have mentioned that for most of these chemicals, the analytical instruments themselves cannot go below 0.01 parts per million, and that's depending on the chemical. Most of them are at that level. I mean, that's how low they can go. So let me cruise through these. So I want to show you at the end what we're hoping. This kind of, so this is an example of combining all the sites just for fun, for Zeta, for every year. So this is 2015, 2014, 2013. I think this 2015 was a little higher because it was drier, not as much rainfall. And then I combined everything just for fun. And if the statistics allow us to combine the data, it would be nice to come up with one line like this. This is all the sites, all the samples, and all the years. So, but our objective is, well, summary, you know, this is, I was just explaining like which markets you can make it into, but what I wanted to show was this. This is what Rufus Isaacs did in Michigan for just 1 year's worth of data. This is what we're talking about doing for our Oregon and Washington. Is have, so green means, so here's the US market, Japan, Canada, Hong Kong, Singapore, and the EU. We have the United States MRL. Of course, you know, if you harvest at the right time, theoretically you should make it without a violation. And here's the MRLs for the different countries. So the green means you can get into those countries with no problem. You can harvest as you would to sell down the street. You're going to make it into those markets, which is pretty good. A lot of our products made market, these particular foreign markets. The yellow, well, let me say the red means you don't want to go to those markets at all. They either don't have a tolerance or they're unreasonably low. You really want to stay away. But the yellow is the interesting part, which means you can make it into those markets and look at that number. It tells you if you wait 7 days, that's what the number indicates, then you can make it into under 25. If you wait 14 days, 21 days, 14. So we're hoping to develop a chart like this for all the data we have for blueberries. And at least it'll be a go-to guide. You have to make the decision yourself in the field. At least this is some scientific data that you can hang your hat on. Don't put your farm up for sale, but hang your hat on it. What is this? Oh, yeah, I mentioned this earlier. I won't take time. We are going to be doing this in Oregon and Washington for insecticides and miticides. And these are the products that we're going to look at. And then if we get all that big fat test federal grant money, we're going to include more insecticides and fungicides, miticides, and a whole bunch of fungicides. Okay. I have time for a quick question while he loads up the next talk, which is detritus resistance.
You can slow down. You're okay.
I feel bad. I always take too much time.
I have a question.
Scott had one, and I'll ask you.
Are those charts available online or?
The graphs?
Yeah, well, or the Pesticide.
I don't know. It's a Michigan thing. It was based on 1 year of Michigan data. I can find out for you. Or you can Google, yeah, small fruits, Michigan State University. But hopefully, you know, we really needed to have it done by now. It just hasn't gotten done. We're going to have that on our chart for Oregon. Yes.
Well, so my question was going to be, so you're averaging the number, or all your sites for each insecticide and creating a new line based on the averages of all the sites?
Yes.
I guess why not go with like the most conservative, you know?
Okay.
Because, I mean, if you're going to be subject to a random sample, you can get that one berry that's more good.
Actually, Jason is, come do the work, what you do. No, you know, I said just take an average, but Jason's saying if you really want to have more confidence, take the most restrictive line and make that the line you go through. Actually, it's easy, you know, once the data's all in the computer now, so we can't spit it out any way we want. It just takes a little time. But that's actually, we talked about that. Yeah, another
You
question.
mentioned when they have no tolerance set that you don't want to ship there. Or does it go to a default limit?
Yeah, her question is, when there's an NT, like on my chart, and what's the charts out there? I don't remember. Yeah. Well, you've seen NTs. Is there a default? Some countries use a default tolerance and some countries don't. You have to know the particular country. Japan has a default tolerance. If they don't have their own MRL, they default to 0.01 parts per million, which is the lowest level that instruments can detect. Canada right now is 0.1 parts per million if they don't have it on their MRL list. However, Canada is proposing to lower their default tolerance to 0.01, maybe by this year. So that's going to make it harder to get into Canada. Some countries don't have their tolerance, and that means there's no tolerance. Like I think New Zealand and Taiwan, no, Taiwan just changed, but a couple of countries, if it's NT, if it's not on their list, then it's 0. They don't want to see anything, even if it's 0.0, you know, as low as the instrument can go.
So like when we're looking in the global MRL database for that, how would we know if that country has a default or not?
Yeah, there's a great website that the USDA pays for. They pay a company named Bryant Christie to maintain this MRL database. They have a whole team of people working on just MRLs for all countries. Okay, I'm going over my time. It's really interesting because the Foreign Ag Service, the group that has the money to reduce trade barriers in the world that we're going to go for our task grant, they're the organization in the United States, USDA Foreign Ag Service, where any country in the world, whenever they're going to make a policy change on their pesticides or MRLs or adding, subtracting, changing, it goes to the World Trade, WTO, World Trade Organization, through the UN. And then those notices get sent out, in our country, it gets sent to USDA FAS. USDA FAS pays Bryant Christie to maintain the MRL database. And if you grab one of my MRL sheets, you don't, is you go to www.globalmrl.com. That's the Brian Christie database, and they're up to date. Well, actually, they update officially about once a week, but that's the best source of information. That was a long answer, but you have to know the country, and in there, they will have information about each country's policy. Some countries are very complicated. If they don't have an MRL, they'll default to Codex MRL, which is an international MRL. If the international MRL doesn't exist, they might default to a different type of berry, or another country might default to a fruit MRL, or the most restricted fruit MRL. Some countries default to the exporting country, would be the United States. So you have to know the country's policy if you're trying to meet, sounds like you're shipping. So, long answer, but again, there's these great resources out here. And that's what I do for the caneberry industry, and the blueberry industry, and the strawberry industry. I get Brian Christie's newsletter, maybe you guys do too. And so I hear about things that are coming through the World Trade Organization, so it kind of puts up my ears a little bit. And I keep my eyes open for changes, that kind of thing. But that's a great resource, www.globalmrl.com.
You got 3 minutes.
I know I did. And over the coast range before the windstorm comes. Okay, real quick. I was talking to Virginia during lunch. I am not a plant pathologist, but Mr. Peerball's here somehow asked me to talk about what's going on with botrytis resistance in the Northwest. And if you have, we have some Canadian, northern Washington folks here, and there is some testing being done that shows there is some resistance to some of our commonly used fungicides. So as quickly as I can, I'm going to give a little history. I'm going to talk about the field and lab data we have as of right now. It sounded like Virginia may be getting into the business of testing fungicides for resistance, which is great to have her right here in Corvallis. A little summary of what they found out, Washington's recommendations, and what the path forward is. So just to get everybody on the same page, the chemicals that I'm going to be talking about mostly are these 4 common fungicides: Elevate, Overall, Switch, and Pristine. And I often refer to them by their chemical name. Just remember, Switch has 2 components, and so does Pristine. These are really, in northern Washington, these are the go-to products. And we use a lot of these products down here. They're good. They've been proven successful. Just remember, though, that in Switch, it's only the cyprodenyl component that's effective against botrytis, and the boscovate component of Pristine that's effective against botrytis. This is a strobilurin which does not get botrytis. I mean, it doesn't kill botrytis. So we're looking at phenhexamide, cyprodenyl, and boscovate. So those are the chemicals that have been tested. So back in 2012, Northern Washington growers, and we have some right here, they started noticing, I think it was a bad botrytis year, and they noticed that some of their usual fungicides that they were spraying as per usual did not work very well. So like, what's going on? And this was their main go-to product. This is the Pristine, Switch, Elevate, and they also use Captain, which we do also. But just as background, and correct me, Northern Washington if I'm wrong, but they have so much moisture and rain up there that they often do 6 fungicide applications for botrytis, whereas down here we don't have as bad a problem, and we might do 3 bloom sprays and maybe 1 before harvest, just to kind of clean up the field before getting shipped off. And so that could be one reason why they do use a lot of fungicides up there. So they decided to start testing for resistance. Maybe something's going on with the botrytis, that they're resistant to these chemicals. Because as you know, the more you use a chemical over and over again, and if you're not changing chemical classes, the disease or the insect will build up resistance to that chemical class. So here's what's been done as far as I know. And a lot of this, well, I'll explain, but a lot of the data came from Jim Adescavage, Tobin Peaver, who is the plant pathologist over in Pullman at WSU. Alan Schreiber shared a lot of his slides with me. He did some of the field work. So there was some laboratory analyses done where they collect samples, put them in a, Virginia could explain it better than I do, put it in a petri dish, expose the botrytis to the fungicide, and you see whether the botrytis grows or not. And if it doesn't grow, that means the fungicide killed it. If it grows, that means it's resistant. Simply put. So in 2012, they grabbed just samples from Whatcom County. There were 9 fields, and they tested Elevate, Pristine, Overall, Switch. Those were what they subjected the samples from those fields to in the laboratory. And in 2013, they expanded a little more. They did Whatcom County also, Skagit County, Southwest Washington, which I think Peerball's group took, and then a couple of samples from Oregon. And this was done in raspberry, blues, strawberries. And they did all kinds of, they just wanted the botrytis, so some of them were berry samples, some were leaves, some were shoots. They just wanted to see what botrytis looked like, and then they tested these products. Bravo was thrown in there, which I don't know why it's not botrytis material. So that was 2013, so I'm going to briefly talk about the results. Then in 2015, Tobin Peaver got involved with small fruits in Washington, and samples were sent to him to do the same testing. He looked at raspberry, blueberry, strawberry samples and Elevate, Switch, Pristine, and Rover. Right now, I wanted the commissioners to know this, right now, only the Washington samples that have been collected have been analyzed. So we don't have Oregon data from 2015 in the lab. Fruit was collected. Jay Scheit, our extension plant pathologist, and his postdoc, Lisa Jones, this summer collected samples from 5 blueberry fields, 4 raspberry, 6 blackberry fields, about 10 fruit from each site. So those are, 50 samples of blueberries, 40 of raspberries, 60 of blackberry. I put this in here because I've been communicating with Tobin, and of course he's analyzing the samples that he's been paid to analyze. So he's sitting on the Oregon samples. And he says if Oregon wants to pay some money, he'd be maybe moving to the front of the line. So I told him I would tell you guys that. But now that we have Virginia on board for free, kind of, maybe she'll do it. Anyway, so there are samples. Samples were collected this year by our pathologist, and Tobin has them. He just has not analyzed them yet. So we really can't say much what the lab data looks like from Oregon. And then in 2015, Alan Schreiber and his team did 2 field trials. One was a big trial looking at 20 different fungicide active ingredients, some in combination with other ones. So we had 30 treatments, which was a big trial. And then he also did a straight, simple trial of blackberries for fungicide efficacy, looking at Kenja, which I'll mention is a new fungicide that's registered now in strawberries, and we should be getting in caneberries and blueberries, Switch, Pristine, and Medora. So this is what I'm going to be talking about in negative 30 minutes. So the data from Jim had established. This was the very first year, just from Whatcom County. Every sample that was sent to him was resistant to Elevate. There was resistance to Elevate, yeah. So in other words, the Elevate did not control the botrytis in the laboratory. Every single sample showed resistance to Elevate. 12% of the samples we received, which were all raspberries, were resistant to the cycrodinol portion of Switch. 15 Boston. But what they found out was, they took the crop history of where they collected, and they found that fields that had captain in the rotation, even though they didn't do a lab test